I'm Andy Patterson from Salt Lake City. I'm a fella. Ever since I saw the first live band, it like struck a nerve in me. Like I had to see live bands, and then when the opportunity came to be in a band that I saw live before I joined the band, was a big game changer for me. Because actually playing shows is, as opposed to like, the talent show at middle school or high school or a buddy's birthday party and we jam or whatever, But when I first saw a band play with a crowd at a venue with a PA and it was tangible, like I could see myself being a part of that. Like that was it. I had to have that be my life. I started dabbling in things outside of drums. Well, when I was a kid, I did kind of back in the 80s, early 90s, taking a boombox and recording something off of another boombox, and then recording that into another boombox and doing like primitive like bouncing. So you record something into the boombox, and then you play that boombox facing another boombox, and then add another track on top of that. So that's playing and the thing that you're doing, and then you just keep doing that until it sounds like a garbled piece of garbage, but fun as hell. And then I moved on to a little cassette 4-track, and kind of fucked around with that. And then I started getting into like making beats with, I got a sampler. And so I started making beats. And then in order to make beats, I needed a microphone. And in order to put it all together, I needed a computer. And that got recording software. And it just kind of has been snowballing and growing, for the last, 20 plus years. So about 20 years ago, holy shit, yesterday is the 20th anniversary of me starting a real studio. Like when I actually rented a building and moved my gear into it and charged bands money for recording. July 5th, 2001. Yeah, I rented what was a previous KRCL building down by the Gateway. Where Spy Hop used to be? It was directly south of that building. There used to be KRCL was temporarily housed there while they were doing their new place or whatever. And then, so I moved in there, and it only lasted maybe a year before, not even a year, less than a year before I recorded Hammer Gun. And I recorded them live in one room, and they had like full stacks and the dual bass rigs. I may be making this more grandiose in my memory, but anyway, it was fucking loud, and it shook the building. And next door to me was a storage facility, and the ladies that ran that storage facility came running up to me the next day as I was getting out of my car, and they were like, "I don't know what you were doing in there yesterday, but you can't do that here." And I'm like, "Lady, it's to be hoped that I do that every day. Like that's my job." And so I had to move. Yeah, and then I took about a year, just kind of fucking around. Did some stuff out of Counterpoint for a little bit, and then I found this place, and I've been able to be as loud as I want for 16 years. Yeah. Okay, the origin story is that I played violin and piano as a kid, and I felt embarrassed to carry my violin to school. I just didn't think it was very cool, but I did it anyway for a while. And then the moment that changed everything was my mom caught me air drumming to a Kiss record in my room and asked me, like, is that something you want to do? And I'm like, yeah. And so her and my older brother bought me a drum kit for either my birthday or Christmas. I can't remember which, but and so that got me started. And so, as any drummer knows, if you have a drum kit, you're going to be in like 5 bands. That's just how it works. And so I joined. At that point, I was just playing in a band with 2 school buddies, and again, like playing like local or the middle school talent show and stuff like that. And then I joined a band that actually played shows, which led to another band that also played shows. And so at one point I was in like 3 bands, and bless my mom's heart, she let us practice in the basement. And she would just like, Saturdays were just all band day for me. Like it would be multiple band practices in a day. And so my mom would just go to the cabin and just be like, have fun and do your thing. And so that got me on my way. Currently, I'm playing drums with Dunn, which is myself on drums and Cash Tolman on bass and vocals. And I'm playing in a band called the Otolith, which is 4/5 of Sub Rosa, and so our new it's the new version of that. And I also play in a 2-piece band with a woman named Dana Schechter called Insect Arc, and that one is a remote kind of a arrangement because she lives in New York. Well, technically she lives in Berlin right now, but she lives in New York and I live here. And she plays lap steel and bass and makes loops, and anyway, it's super cool. What else? Those are my active bands. And then I play drums for bands in the studio fairly regularly. But I found I find my lane that I'm good at. So, when I join a band, like I joined a band a couple years ago, and they asked me if I had any requirements or questions or whatever. And one of them was that I don't play double kick and I don't play blast beats. It's just, I don't enjoy doing that, so I'm not good at it. And so I find my lane. I'm an older gentleman these days, so I mostly play doom and like slower tempo, stuff that I'm not going to throw out my back doing. So, sonically, yes. Financially, I could do to make more money than I do, but sonically, I'm in a good place right now. I think I've been making some good sounding records as last. I think I've made good sounding records the whole time, but I've really kind of found I don't know, my zen in recording bands these days. The key is just not overthink it. The more I like pour over a mix, the dumber it's gonna be. But if I guess the biggest lesson that I've learned about recording is garbage in, garbage out. So make sure that shit sounds pretty much how it's gonna sound in the mix as you're tracking, because that was the biggest mistake that I made in the early days. Is like, oh, I'll fix it in the mix, or I'll EQ that shitty sounding snare instead of replacing the snare or tuning it differently, or making it not shitty at the source, as opposed to like trying to like use some magic like fucking moves in the computer or whatever that almost never work out. It just makes it a different version of shitty. And so my favorite sessions are when I'm actually stressed out about everything working properly, because they sound so good that I don't want anything to go wrong on my end. Where I don't have to like coax tone out of a guitar player's amp, or or tell a drummer to hit harder, or I don't know, whatever. Like when I can just sit back and just watch it almost like it's a show for me, and all I have to do is just make sure that all my preamps are working, and like that no one bumped a microphone or anything like that. Those are the best, when I can just like, and then I'm just like, oh, this mix is gonna be super easy because everything sounds so good already. When I'm working with a band where I'm just like, that guitar tone, something needs to happen there. But I've also developed tricks to be able to make my job easier. Like I had a band come in once from out of town, and he used these amps that just didn't sound great, but he loved them. They were like his amps, right? And I took a DI off of, and thankfully he didn't use any pedals other than a tuner. So it was just his guitar straight into the amps. So I took a DI off of his guitar before the amps, and he was telling me that, one of the bands that he wants to sound like is Sleep, or, Goat Snake, or, something in that genre or whatever. And the amps that he was using are not typically in the Doom canon, like, so, and I did tell him about it, but after the fact. I asked for forgiveness, not for permission, right? So I took his guitar, and then I reamped him through my Sun Model Ts. And I actually got compliments from other people that that weren't there and didn't know the process, like telling me like, man, the guitars sound great on that record that you did. I'm like, oh, thanks, man. And yeah, so that stuff happens once in a while. Or one time I tricked a guitar player into using one of my amps, because on his amp he was using like a modeler, and on it the preset said tread plate, which is code for Mesa Boogie. Like if it's a British, it would be like a Vox or a Marshall or something like that, right? And I was like, okay, that thing's trying to do with math that this thing does with iron and glass like all day. So let's just try it and like see if you, or even to just like see if you could match yours to this, And he used my amp, and he loved it. And then I saw him like a year later, and he's like, I'm still mad at you. And I'm like, well, what did I do? He's like, I had to go out and buy a fucking Mesa Boogie, man, because of you. I was perfectly content with my amp emulator. And then I heard the real thing, and I had to have the real thing. So success is people still coming to me and trusting me with their albums, their music, If, back in the day, like when I first started, I honestly, sincerely was like, I wonder when people are going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing, or I just got lucky. Like for, the first Form of Rocket record, I had no fucking idea how to record bands. I just started doing it. There weren't YouTube videos. Like, it was basically me on tapeop.com message board trying to read every single thing in the forum and try to glean some knowledge from that, right? And anyway, so the first Form of Rocket record came out wonderfully. I'm still proud of that record. It still holds up to this day. And I got fucking lucky with that record. It just happened to be, everybody played great. I just managed to not fuck it up. So yeah, I feel like I'm successful in the fact that 20 years in, and people are still calling. And people are calling that I've worked with numerous times, you know? I mean, working with like Gentry, like the new Iceburn record. Gentry is, it's kind of an honor for me because I've recorded almost everything he's done. Shy of like maybe 3 or 4 records with, 2 or 3 records with Eagle Twin and the early Iceburn stuff. And the fact that he trusts me to record with me for important things, like the last Eagle Twin record, and it was on Southern Lord, and they'd recorded the 2 previous Eagle Twin records with someone else, and it was their 3rd record, and it's kind of it's important, and then also to trust me with the Iceburn record. It's the first Iceburn record in like 23 years, 24 years, and that's a huge honor that he's trusting something that's kind of precious in a way, you know? And so, and I feel that's success for me. I will brag, if you'll allow me to brag for just a second. Gentry texted me a couple days ago and told me that he and Aaron Turner were talking, and Aaron Turner loves the new Iceburn record, and then asked, quote, who mixed this monster? And so that's success to me. You know who Aaron Turner is, right? Isis, Old Man Gloom, Sumac, and I would say he has a discerning ear. And so for someone like him to compliment the production, my production, that's success. I mean, someone that I appreciate and look up to sonically. I don't know him personally, but sonically, I look up to him and have been a fan for some time. But so yeah, there you go. That's the answer. Aaron Turner jocked me. So that's success. It's lonely on the top of this mountain. Well, I told this story before, and it's not a current guilty pleasure right now. What was my guilty pleasure earlier this year was watching reaction videos. People watching videos or listening to music and reacting to it. And it started being like in the context of like the first one that like caught my eye was these 2 black guys that would listen to metal, and it wasn't in their wheelhouse, right? And that's not racist. They stated that like they've never heard Slayer, they've never, you know, and so I thought it was intriguing to me to like watch someone react to something that like is so foreign to them, and be able to process it and like even like it, you know? And then I realized like how stupid that is, because it's almost like that thing where people will watch YouTube or Twitch videos of people playing video games, and it's essentially the same thing. And then all of a sudden it clicked in my brain like, well, that's kind of embarrassing that I do that. It's useless, a way to spend time. Kiss was technically the first band that I cared about. I was listening I was playing Kiss Double Platinum vinyl. I was playing it backwards to try to hear satanic messages. I heard none, but then I let it roll, and really liked the music that I was hearing. So that was the first band that like I went out and purchased a record. Other than stuff that was on the radio, and there were songs on the radio that I liked or whatever, but that was the first band where I'm like, I need to have a copy of their record. I love music everywhere, but I love music in Salt Lake because it's all my friends, and that's the best way to put it. They're all my friends, and so I have a bias towards Salt Lake music. And there's a lot of really, really good music in Salt Lake, like a weirdly high quality of musicians. So that's why I love music in Salt Lake. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. What could make it better? Keep making more. It's kind of like the success question. It's like, what makes a good band? Like, okay, here's a quote, and I'm probably butchering the shit out of it, but from Ian MacKaye from Fugazi, asked, what are your favorite records? And he said, the ones that are released. Right? So it's kind of like it's like a DC punk hardcore version of if a tree falls in the forest kind of a thing, right? So to make it better is to continue, To make it worse is if just bands just stop doing stuff. Especially the good ones. If the good ones stop doing stuff, then the bad ones take over. And then, bad bands are like tribbles in Star Trek, They just start multiplying and then we're screwed. Best piece of gear. My Sun Model Ts. Those are my favorite pieces of gear ever because they do exactly the thing that I want them to do consistently. So the worst piece of gear would be probably, I don't know, the dumb short answer to that is like, the worst piece of gear is stuff that I don't have anymore. Or the amp that blew up on me in the middle of a session, and couldn't be fixed, or, I don't know. That's best piece of gear is my Sun Model Ts. Worst piece of gear is that stupid thing that I got rid of. He probably won't see this. I taught Ray Capo, Ray of Today, Youth of Today, Shelter. I did a tour playing drums for Shelter in Japan, and I drank sake with Ray and taught him how to use a pipe to smoke weed. I don't know if you're familiar with Youth of Today. They're one of the biggest straight edge bands, like New York hardcore straight edge, like no drinking, no drugs. Now he's like a super Krishna dude, anyway. Anyway, for people that would know how epic of a story that is, that I taught Ray of Today how to smoke weed. He was using a pipe, and there's the little carb on the side. You gotta hold the little carb on the side, and then open it, and then suck. Yeah, he didn't know how to do that, and I taught him. Take the system down from within. Okay, I'll plug. I don't know when this is coming out, but I'll plug Jerem Bischoff. Crucial Fest 10 is happening this year. Fingers crossed. And he busts his ass to make Crucial Fest happen. And I'm highly optimistic that this year is going to be amazing. And so, yeah, there you go. There's a local endorsement. Good job, Jerem.